I am so honored and privileged to have the one and only Pamela Leo today. She is the author of the groundbreaking book, Connection Parenting. You are an advocate for children, a speaker. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for asking me.
Of course, of course. So, one of your famous quotes is, "Let's raise children who don't have to recover from their childhood." Tell me, what are we all recovering from?
Our childhood. Well, I think we're recovering from the model of parenting that most of us grew up with, which was the authoritarian model of parenting, where I always tell people that has been two models of parenting: authoritarian parenting and permissive parenting, both
Okay.
of which are based on fear.
Yeah.
Authoritarian parenting is based on the child's fear of losing the parent's love. And permissive parenting is actually based on the parent's fear of losing the child's love, which, as we know, practically not possible.
Yes.
But connection parenting is not based on fear. It is based on love.
Yes. And
So trying to, get past the model that we had. And one of the things we know is that we recorded every word that was ever said to us, and those recordings are permanently stored inside of us. And when our buttons get pushed, that's what plays, unless we make a conscious effort to do something different.
yeah.
And so it's a struggle to switch from that model to the connection model, but it's doable with the tools.
Yeah. How did we even get to a place where this is the way of parenting? Like how, like we're in your books, and all the people that, speak our language, we're bringing back connection and a way to be with our children. But how did we get lost, do you think, in the first place?
What I think, and I think history bears that out, is no one had to teach our great grandparents connection parenting. They didn't read parenting books, but it was the way they lived that created connection parenting. Everybody was on the farm more or less, and they worked together. They weren't separated all day long. Babies were born at home. They were breastfed. I mean, the lifestyle was a connection lifestyle. And then as things progressed and everything changed to where, over time, today, many children, are born in hospital, not breastfed, from the very beginning, spend long hours away from their parents. And so now connection has to be very intentional, or it's not going to happen. So that's really what I tried to talk about. We can't go back to the old ways. So we have to figure out how, in this day and age, we can recreate the connection that we are biologically wired for. Babies come in expecting to have that. And so how, if we have to go back to work right away, and we have all of the things that, and I mean, I'm not saying, people who have hospital births and can't breastfeed, those are all circumstances that we sometimes have no vote about. And so I think what's important is, regardless if you birth at home or in a hospital, if you breastfeed, if you bottle feed, how can you strengthen your connection with your child in whatever circumstances you are in? And it is doable. And I taught my class, the connection parenting. At the time, it was called Meeting the Needs of Children. And it was a 6-week class. And parents were saying to me, "This is too hard. I can't do this." And I thought, why are people saying that? And then I realized it was too hard, because if you're trying to do it alone, it's too hard. So I added the 7th class, which is the 7th chapter in the book, the needs of parents. And what kind of support we need. And if we don't have biological family there nearby to support us, how we need to create family of choice, and how we parent from a much better place when our needs are met. And that can only happen if we have a village or an extended family. So, yeah.
Yes. I love that you highlight that, and you give us parents grace and compassion, self-compassion, to remember that this is not normal, to be so isolated and alone, and to raise a child.
parenting never was and was never intended to be a 1 or 2 person job. It just doesn't work well for anyone, the parent or the child.
Yeah.
So, recreating the circumstance where they have other people who love them, where they have other people who love you and will support you. Yes. So necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you just expand, because connection, the word is, so
big.
Yes. And it's so powerful. It's so meaningful, and it's such a core basic need of children and of all of us. Can you just kind of explain what it means to you and just the power of it, so it doesn't seem like just this big, vague word to parents?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, one of the things, I'm going to kind of answer it by saying what connection isn't.
Okay.
And so one of the ways that we know that there's a disconnect with our children is that they won't look at us, they won't talk to us, and they don't want us to touch them. We know right away that there's disconnect there. And we have to find our way back to connection. And what I often tell parents, they'll say, but coercive parenting works. And I say, yes, it does work as long as we're bigger than them. And they have too much to lose if they're not in our favor. But what's going to happen when they're teenagers? Are they going to stay in timeout? So one of the things about connection that I talk about is that by that time, we need something much stronger in place than coercion. And to me, connection means each cares about what the other thinks, feels, needs, and wants. That has to matter on both sides. And, what it takes to make that the case, that children need to know that what they think and feel does matter to us. We might not always be able to make the circumstances the way they would like them to be, but that's much easier to bear if they know that we would try, that we care. So to me, that's connection. And my thinking was strongly, strongly influenced by nonviolent communication. I love Marshall Rosenberg's work. And one of his phrases that was especially powerful for me was power with instead of power over. And so when we have connection, we have power with. It's like, I have to go to the bank. They don't want to leave the house. How can we meet both people's needs? And we can't always, but we can try. We can say, well, maybe you could bring your toy with you. Or maybe I could go tomorrow. We can negotiate and say, this is what you need. This is what I need. And I mean, if you think about the message to the child when we're having that conversation with them, what I need matters. I matter.
Yes. And I love that you say that we only really need to use coercion when there's a lack of connection, right?
Yes.
And it's like our last ditch effort. And it's so true. I see, in my son, when we're deeply connected, that he cares about me. Like he cares if I'm in a rush, like he'll want to help me get there, and that's the influence connection has, right? We have influence over our children. Yeah.
And they know they have influence with us.
Yes, it goes both ways. And another thing that goes both ways, which I love that you highlight and emphasize, is respect. And I'm not talking about respect that children should have for us. I'm talking about respect that we need to have for our children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I mean, I remember hearing adults say, children today don't treat anyone or anything with respect. And my counter to that is they cannot give respect until they first receive it and see a model of that and see what that looks like. Because when we're treating them with disrespect, that's what we're modeling, how to be disrespectful.
Exactly.
And I think we so often forget that every minute of the day, we are modeling for them what it is to be a human being. So we're either modeling respect and love and kindness, or, my way or the highway kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. And that also goes with listening, right? I feel when a child feels listened to,
Mhm.
truly listened to, not distraction listening, right? They are so, they learn to listen back.
They do. I
Yeah.
can't remember. I think it was a parent in one of my classes said that their child said to them, listen to me with your eyes,
Oh.
to like,
Oh,
I know you're
yeah.
listening if our eyes are seeing each other. Because, imagine being 3 feet tall and you're talking to mom who's, distracted and doing something
Mhm.
else. But if you listen with your eyes as well as your ears, then they know, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot
It's
to shut my
okay.
phone
It's
off.
okay.
So sorry.
It's okay. Oh, that's a powerful line. Listen with your eyes. I know
That and
children.
another one that I love so much, which I think are similar,
Mhm.
is in the communication class, one parent shared, please talk to me like I'm someone you love.
Oh, yeah, I read
Oh,
that.
that
That
went
killed
right to my
me.
heart. I think it's in
Me
the book. I
too.
think I
Yes.
used that quote in the book because
Yes.
it was just so powerful. I learned so much from parents. Before I wrote the book, I had been teaching this class both publicly and in the prison for 16 years.
Oh,
Well, no,
wow.
18 years.
Wow.
So I got to learn so much from parents and their experiences, and them taking home this information and trying to apply it. And I thought I shut that off.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
How they would try to apply it and their successes and their
Mhm.
challenges. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it was just so rich. So I got to
Yeah.
do, so many things by hearing what parents experience of what I put out there, you
That's
know.
amazing. That's amazing. And the parents that I've worked with, so many of them have told me, like my child says, "You're not listening to me," or they say, "But you don't care about me," or and isn't just like they are telling us everything we need to know,
Mhm.
right? They are just handing
Out
it
there.
on it, right?
Yeah,
And if we
don't
just
hold
hear
back
that, right? We just have to listen. They're telling us everything we need to know,
all the time, all the time.
right? Yes.
And that was when I can't believe I can't shut that phone off.
Something.
I just had it like down, 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 down. All right, let me just make sure the light goes out.
No worries.
It won't shut off. This is crazy. I'll just put it in the other room.
Yeah, it's
Someone's determined to
okay.
talk to me. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No
Where
worries.
were we?
If children are telling us all the time.
Oh, right. That when we start to see behavior as
Mm,
communication, because
mm,
children, even if they have language, don't always have the language to tell us what they need, but their
yes,
behavior is always trying to tell us what they need, what hurts, you know,
yes,
always through their
yes.
behavior.
Yes, yes, yes. And I was working with parents of strong-willed children, and a lot of them, struggle with their child's behavior, misbehavior, and a challenging behavior. And 99% of the time, it's all a cry for connection underneath that. And it's so hard for us. We're stressed and we're frustrated and we're busy and we have other kids and we don't know to see it as what it really is, right? And also, can you explain how, what is that block we have as parents to look beneath the behavior? Even when it's a 2, 3, 4-year-old child, sometimes we can't even see past the behavior. Is it something from our childhoods? What is it that is, enabling us from seeing the need?
I mean, I think every, circumstance is a little different, but
Mm.
a lot of times if the behavior is pushing our buttons, then our good thinking goes out the window when our
Yeah.
buttons are pushed, and then we
Yeah.
go on to automatic. And when we
Mm.
go on to automatic, what comes out is whatever we got.
Mm.
And instead of our thoughtful, intentional parenting that we want to do, I love Scott Noel's quote that I included in my book is that we will always be parenting in the gap between the
Yes.
parenting we aspire to and the parenting we can do in that moment.
Mm.
And the saving grace to me
Mm-hmm.
connection parenting is where I talk about rewind, repair, replay, which
Yeah.
really dates me because it goes back to when we had the videos where you would rewind. But I didn't change it because it seems like the most accurate, like go back. So
Mhm.
it's like rewind. Oh, what I just said wasn't respectful, or how I just responded wasn't kind, whatever the disconnect we created was. And
Mhm.
then to repair it and say, I am sorry. That's not the kind of mom I want to be,
Mhm.
and let's start over. Can we have a do
Mhm.
over? And, because we need that grace. We're not
Yeah.
perfect. We will never be perfect, no matter how long we do this. And
Yeah.
so much of our ability to do this kind of parenting through connection is going to depend on doing our own healing work,
Yeah.
because otherwise that's always going to be our first response, is whatever
Yes.
we got. And the
Yeah.
more and more we can do our own healing work, the more space we have to operate from what we really want to do with our
Mhm.
children. So,
Mhm.
when parents would tape my class and do the whole series, and then, it would be like, oh no, the class is over. I won't be able to ask questions every week.
Mhm.
And, I just say the next step really is doing your own healing work, because
Yes.
then you'll be able to use these tools and implement these strategies of how to parent through connection.
Yes, yes. And that's something that I believe a non-negotiable when you are trying to become the most conscious parent and mindful parent and connected parent. You can't do all of this authentically and genuinely unless you do the inner work. Because then I feel like it's, the gentle parenting more, it's an act, or you're biting your tongue, or you're not really true. You know what I mean? There's something, I fake about it if you haven't really connected the dots, like Daniel Siegel's work, to your childhood, and now bring that self-awareness, which in turn, in those heated moments, gives you more response flexibility and gives you that choice of how you would like to react or
Right.
respond, right?
And getting to a place where we realize we were worthy of respect, even if we didn't get it, then
Mm-hmm.
that lets us be aware that our children are also worthy of respect, and that
Yes.
we both were, and we didn't get that, and we didn't have that model. And one of the things that I do that's really connected to my new project, the literacy project,
Mm-hmm.
is if we didn't grow up hearing I love yous and much verbal affection, we the same way we have those tapes of coercion, do this or else, that sort of thing, we lack the tapes of affection.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't come as easily to us if we don't have that inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I suggest to parents, there are so many children's books, like I Love You to the Moon and Back, is to read those books to your children,
Mm-hmm.
because that will prompt it, and that will be a model, and that will help you with that. Because it isn't for any lack of love for our children that we may not be verbally affectionate. It just that we're not used to it. We didn't hear it.
Yeah.
So the more we can incorporate those kinds of books into our reading aloud with children, the more we can, build up our ability and build that muscle to do that.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about the books, can you talk more read aloud, sorry, parenting, and your book, Fairy
Sure.
Project?
So yes. So 8 years ago, when my great grandson was born, I was privileged to be at his birth, and I came home and
Wow.
I wrote a letter to my granddaughter telling her how important it was going to be to read to him every day, starting now. And somehow that letter to her morphed into a poem that I
Oh.
called Please Read to Me. And I thought, this is kind of good. Um, I Googled early literacy sites to see, who might like to use it. It's like really encouraging for parents to read to children. And every site I landed on had this same statistic, that 2/3 of the 15.5 million children living in poverty in this country did not own even one book. I was horrified. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I grew up with no books. We
Hmm.
were very poor. We didn't have books.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what? I shop at Goodwill all the time. I know that there is a ton of books out there. There shouldn't be a reason why children have no books, because those numbers translate into 10 million children going to bed every night with no bedtime story, and not having that opportunity, parents not having that opportunity for connection that bedtime story provides. And I thought, as a one person, I can't do much about poverty, but
Mm.
I know I can do something about getting books into children's homes for free.
Mm.
So I just started.
Mm.
I became a nonprofit, the Book Fairy Pantry Project. It was originally going to be the Book Fairy Project, but that name was
Okay.
already taken, and the Gmail. And so
Ah.
my plan was to distribute the free books through food pantries, to empower
Oh.
parents to bring home books as well as food to their children, to feed bodies and minds. So I just
Oh.
threw the word pantry in there so we could have
Yeah.
that. So it's a long title, Book Fairy Pantry Project, but it's working for us. So that was 8 years ago, and the project has grown immensely. And so often people will say to me, how did you get from connection parenting to literacy? And it really is a natural marriage,
Yeah.
because I know of no quicker, easier, simpler way to connect with a child than to read aloud to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, it was natural. And the fact that I grew up without books, I wanted children to have books. So, as it has kind of evolved, I've realized there's a lot of literacy um, promotion out there that's like, read
Mhm.
to your child 15 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, or some number. And
Mhm.
I think that parents kind of get really tired of being told what to do.
Yeah.
And so the theme of my book is in the child's voice: read to me, please read to me. So it's the child
Mm.
asking for love and literacy. And what I realized is there is a way of parenting that incorporates reading as a major tool for connection. So
Mm.
whoever the come home parent is at the end of the day, or both, what a great way to reconnect is make the first thing before we make dinner, anything, just sit down and even read one story together. So if
Mm.
it's one parent coming home, that could be the coming home ritual. And so
Mhm.
there are
Mhm.
so many ways to incorporate books into how we connect with children. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book called Read Aloud Parenting. So I'm in the
Oh.
process of writing that book. And I
Mm.
mean, if I had to capsulize it, it would be even, well, a minimum of 5 minutes a day, but every day, to
Yeah.
read aloud with your baby from the day they're born
Oh.
is a major parenting tool. Just, and
Wow.
because two of our children's greatest needs are, one, to be securely connected to at least one adult, and two, to have a strong foundation for learning to read. Children don't learn to
Mm.
read when they get to school. They start learning the day they're born. And
Mm.
in 5 minutes, we get to provide both of those. So it's practical,
Wow. Yes.
it's powerful. So I feel like, and the book is going to be very short, because
Okay.
parents don't have a lot of time to read long
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
And so there's a joke in writers about, sorry about the long letter, I didn't have time to write a short one. So I think writing a short book is going to take me longer. I mean, I
Yeah.
tried to keep connection parenting as short as I could too. And when the Spanish version came out, it didn't include all of the back, all the resources, and it's a
Okay.
much smaller book. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
very big on small books, because I appreciate how busy parents are, and if they can read a small book that really empowers them. I had a
Mhm.
column years ago in our local paper. I have one actually, again, called Recipes for Reading, but back in the day it was called Empowered Parents. And I would
Oh,
write
okay. Yes.
articles, and that was the goal, was to empower parents with information that they could
Oh,
use to make their parenting more loving, more connecting, more peaceful.
yeah.
So
Well, I can't wait for the book. I
I
can't
can't
wait.
wait too.
When does it come out?
I haven't finished it, so I don't have
Okay.
it yet. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
But
just
we'll all be looking out for it. And how
uh,
that's amazing work that you to give those children in need books. That's such a beautiful, beautiful mission.
well, and it's so much fun. I cannot tell you how much fun. This project is the passion of my life, because
Oh,
books we give are donated by
Good.
many of them by children because they've outgrown them
Yeah.
and they want other children to have books. So I have stickers that I put on the books, books for children, from children.
From children. Amazing.
It really
Amazing.
is. And that's where they should go. I kind of call it my Robin Hood project. Not that we steal the books, but we take from the haves and give to the have-nots because they donate them to us. And I call it community supported early literacy because everyone in the community contributes to making this work. So it is very exciting. It's very exciting.
Must be so fulfilling for you.
Thank you. So my book, so that poem, Please Read to Me, got turned into a board book. And it got illustrated and turned into a board book. It has just now come out as a picture book that is bilingual Spanish. And also it's a 2-story book. Please Read to Me is in the front, and the story of Book Fairy Pantry Project is in the back with instructions about how people, I always tell people, no one offered me the job of Book Fairy. I appointed myself, and you can do the same. Because every school, community, every place needs a book fairy, someone who is willing to collect donated books and distribute them, because there's no shortage of books. There's just a shortage of book fairies.
It's true. It's exactly
Thank you for
true.
letting me talk about that. As you can tell,
oh my goodness. I'm so happy. That's amazing. And what inspiration. And it's just, I love that you found this passion, and it's such a powerful, I don't know what to even call it. It's bigger than a mission, but you're changing lives.
But you know what I tell people? Do you know about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library? She gives free books to children all over the world.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yes. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And so I tell people only Dolly can be Dolly, but everybody can be a book fairy.
Yes, yes.
And
wow.
I'm sure, and we actually dedicated Please Read to Me to Dolly because she was my inspiration that one person can make a difference, because she is making a difference in the lives of millions of children, millions.
Wow, I had no idea. Thank you so much for telling me. That's incredible. Wow.
From birth to age 5, if parents sign them up, and if their state is funded, because it requires co-funding, they get a free book in the mail every month for 5 years. So by the time they're 5 years old, they have their own personal library of 60 books from Dolly.
Wow, amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Wow.
Definitely my hero.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Amazing. I have a few more questions, if you don't mind, just because I have you. I need to. So good. Thank you so much. So speaking of, the power of books, there's also something that is so, I think, underrated, but so powerful, which is the power of play. That's right. Tell me about that.
So I have to tell you, everything I learned about the power of play, I learned from Larry Cohen, who wrote the book Playful Parenting. And Larry used to be in Massachusetts, so he would come up to Maine, where I live, and we co-presented. I got to take his workshops. I read his book. And so I was not a playful parent with my children. I really was not good at it because I didn't have that model or that experience. But by the time my grandchildren came along, I had read Larry's book. I had done his workshops. I had co-presented with him. I was really good at playing with my grandchildren. And one of the things that Larry says is playing is a skill that can be learned. And I can vouch for that because I learned that skill. Most of it is based on silliness.
Yes.
Absolutely silly as you can manage. And we adults are not particularly good at silliness. Some are. And more often than not, dads, more so than moms, not to stereotype, but that's been the feedback I get from dads and from parents. Moms will say, oh, dad's the playful person in our family. And I'm like, well, we can learn too. And we can. And just being able, but it requires being totally present.
Absolutely.
We can't be on our phone and be being playful.
No. And
Yeah. So one of the reasons that his book was so important to me is one of the things, as you know, that I talk about in my book is special time, is spending special
Mhm.
time every day. That's how children know. And that's how we
Mhm.
build connection, by giving each child some amount. If you have 5 children, it's going to have to be a smaller amount, but sometime every day where we're just focused on our relationship with them. And
Yeah.
some people have called connection parenting relationship parenting.
Mhm.
I love that. And if I'd have thought of it, I'd have called it that too, because
Yes.
that truly is what it's about. It's about our relationship with that child. So imagine if
Yeah.
you're dating someone, and what kind of a relationship would you have if you didn't ever spend time together?
Yeah.
And
Yes, yes,
so your
yes.
dates are important. And so having, I say, a minimum of 10 minutes a day, special time, ideally a date every week. And a date can be anything. It doesn't need to be the movies or the circus, or, it can be going out for a hot cocoa. It can be going for a
Yes.
walk. Some dads say, I have a date, we go to the dump. So you
Mm.
take a chore you need to do anyway and throw in a hot cocoa, and you've got a date.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so when we know how to play, our date can be tickle time, if that's what the child likes, or
Yeah.
come find me, or,
Yeah.
anything, depending clearly on their age. For another child, it might be, let's cook together.
Mhm. Yeah.
Depending on the age and personality of the child, how we spend special time will be, you know, dependent on that. And
Yeah.
letting them pick, if it's
Yeah.
doable, if it's something we can do, how should we spend special time today? Once
Yeah.
they're big enough to pick. When
Yeah.
they're younger, it's, bouncing them on our knee and patty cake and peekaboo. But as they get older and older, we might sit and build Legos together, we
Yeah.
might, sing. There's so many, and dancing together. I
Yeah.
added a fourth thing to when children, when they won't look at you, talk to
Yeah.
you, is if they will dance with
Dance with
you,
you.
you're connected.
Yes,
Because
I
it
love that.
requires those other three things in order
Yes,
to dance.
exactly. I love that.
And so
I love
just,
that.
turning off everything else and putting on music and dancing in the living room is such a great way of connecting. There's so
Yes,
many ways to do it.
so many ways. And I love that people call your book relationship parenting too, because I think this is where so many of us parents get stuck, is that we see parenting as this role we have to take on instead of a relationship. And that role, which is a rigid role and a controlling role, and everything has to be perfect role, is what stops us from being so playful.
Yes.
And it's just and because we're like, no, I'm the parent, I have to be the parent. And then and then that parent is not playful and silly, they're the parent. And the child needs our human side. They need that, it is a relationship. And I love also you said in the book that there's a difference between watching your child play, like taking them to the park and, sitting on the bench. That's not playing. They need engaged play.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, I mean, people think, well, it's special time if I take them to the park. And certainly taking them to the park is better than them just being home watching television.
Yeah.
But it's way more special if we're playing at the park with them. So one is, there are sort of levels of it. And it's interactive is like the high test of the fuel for the relationship, for sure.
Yes, yes. If you could rewrite one parenting rule that persists, what would it be and why?
So say a little more about parenting rule.
So like a cultural norm that, all parents think is the
Oh,
norm. If there's one that most of us believe, how would you rewrite it? What would you rewrite it to?
I think I would rewrite the power over rule that we're
Yeah.
supposed. I'm trying to think where it was. It'll come to me, but I saw a meme or quote the other day that said, how well, this won't be exact, but the gist of it is how well we're doing as parents is not measured by our children's behavior, it's measured by our behavior.
I think you saw that on my website.
Was it yours?
That's what I, yeah, I
Yes,
say
I
that on my
love
website.
that. I
Yeah.
love it, love it. Yeah.
Yeah. True.
Thank you for giving me the source. But it's
Yeah.
so true. It
It's
is
so
so true.
true. It is
I was
so
spending
true.
time with a little girl the other day who is almost 3.5, for her grandmother so she could get some things done. She's my good friend.
Mm.
And her mom was away for the week and she was feeling sad about it. And I was trying to get her outdoors so my friend could actually have some quiet time. And she was all dressed in her snowsuit. It was a cold day. And she wasn't having it. She did not want to come outside with me. And so I
Aw.
said, are you missing your mom? And she was kind of just had a sad face. And I said, who wants to go outside when you're missing your mom? You know? And so I just went there with her and I said, okay, we'll read in the mudroom. You know, I have a book. I brought a special book in my car because she's at that age of why, everything, why. And I found a book called Why.
No, how
And
perfect.
as soon as I said, I'll go out and get the book, she said, I'll come with you. I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay. So then once we're outside, I'm like, well, we are outside. We could bring the book in when let's maybe take a little walk up here and see that new house they're building up. Anyway, it just went forward. And afterwards, you know, we were kind of, her grandma and I were talking about it. And she said, I just love the way that you validated her and you didn't try to put your agenda on her and you were just present with her. She said, I don't know if I could have done that. And I said, well, I'm not with her all the time. So I'm fresh energy and fresh attention and on my best parenting behavior, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know, trying to walk my talk. And she said it just was wonderful that was the way you handled it. And I was proud of it too, because I
Yeah.
thought I just met her where she was. You know, I wasn't trying to
Yes.
jolly her out of feeling her sad feelings.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was a little touch silly and but not to the point of, you know, being disrespectful. When I said, well, who wants to go outside when you're missing your mom, you know, she kind of looked at me with a little twinkle in her eye, like
Oh.
she got it that I was being
Yeah.
playful. And
Oh.
then the rest of our time together was just magical. We read
Oh.
the YY book, and the way it was set up, it had word balloons. And
Okay.
so I read it through once. I said, do you want to read it again? Because we make the mistake so often of reading a book only once. And I know myself, I listen to audiobooks in my car all the time, and I'll listen to them again and again and again because I hear something different every time. So I said, do you want to read it again? And she said, yeah. And I said, I'll tell you what, this time, I said, see this? I said, that says why. I said, so when I turn the page, I'll read the big word balloon and I'll point to that and you can read why. So now she's reading the book with me. She's 3.5
Oh,
reading with me.
wow.
So I would point to it and she'd go, why?
Oh.
Because that's what the child says all the way through the book. Why?
Oh.
And then we got into this game of why. And she'd say, why? And I'd say, because, you know, like in a Papa Bear voice. And it was just, you know, and we can sustain that for short periods of time, but we only need to sustain it for short periods of time
Yeah.
to do the job, to have that
Yeah.
special time. Yeah, it was
Yes.
really sweet because I
That
don't have
is,
a lot of littles in my
yeah.
life anymore. My grandchildren are older. And so I really enjoy that time I get to spend with her.
That's so special. And that was just proof that, you know, you validated her and she felt seen, right, by you. And that disarms the child. It's such a, you know, it's human nature that when we feel seen and listened to, it disarms us and we're open and, you know, is
Like she
it.
didn't have to fight for her right to be sad.
Yes,
You know?
yes, yes. And yes, speaking of sad, there's one thing that it just killed me when I read it and heard it that you say, and I think every parent needs to be reminded of this. And when a child cries, you said the hurt has already happened. I'm going to cry now. The crying is the healing.
Yeah.
And this is what so many of us parents try to stop. We're stopping the healing. And just, you can tell me more about this.
I would love to tell you more about it. So there is a newer book, Patty Whiffler for the Parents Leadership Institute did a whole series of booklets way, way back in the day, but she now has a book called Hand in Hand Parenting.
Okay.
And I learned about the crying is the healing from doing classes with Patty. She used to come to Maine, and it was just awesome. So, I mean, there's so much resource there. And I mentioned that in my book because I wanted parents to know where I learned these things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't enter parenting knowing any of these, most of these things.
Yeah.
And, you know, the very first book I ever read, a parenting book, was How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And I still recommend that book to parents because it was the book that set me on the path of knowing there was more to know. And then once I knew there was more to know, it was insatiable.
Yes.
And then my girls are 7 years apart. And my second child was way more of a challenge than my first one.
Yeah.
And I needed more and more answers. And so I tried to learn more and more. So I always tell people, don't think that because I wrote Connection Parenting that my children don't have to recover from their childhood, because it was a work in progress as they were growing up. And the more I learned, the more I tried to incorporate into my parenting. But when my youngest daughter was a teenager, we would do date night. And one week she said, can my friend come on date night with us? Her mom doesn't do that, and I want her to see what it is. And everything in me wanted to say, but if she comes, it won't be date night. But I managed to squelch it and say, sure, she can come. And so, of course, it was the way I knew it would be. I was the chauffeur and they were, you know, chatting, and we did something. I don't even recall now what it was. But then the next week, she said, Mom, I think I want it to just be us this week.
Oh.
She totally, from her own experience, because I didn't interfere, got it. That as soon as the third person was added, it changed the dynamic. And it wasn't her and I on a date. It was me chauffeuring them on a date. And it was so validating to me when she said, I think I want it to just be us.
Coming from her, that's amazing.
Yes. And so, I mean, those dates need to be continued right up until they leave our home. You know, I go on coffee dates with my grandson, who's now 16. You know, and because we both love books. So we often, you know, talk about books, and he's like a tech wizard and I'm like a tech dinosaur. So he teaches me a lot. But yeah, dates are just the way we create connection. And I mean, like a date can be going out to do something, but a date can just be going for a walk and collecting leaves or something. It just is about special time together.
Oh, yes. Beautiful. Two more questions. One is, if parents are listening and they feel maybe, I don't know, that they have been disconnected from their child, is there some kind of hope you can give them, or, you know, hope basically that they can make the change?
Absolutely. And so I have always said it is, because I would have parents in my class who had older children. I mean, it's lovely if you can have this information from day one, but most parents don't. Most parents come to it when parenting becomes such a struggle, they need some help. And I would always say to them, you know, whatever your age child is, you can just sit down with them and say, you know what? I have decided I don't really love the way I've been parenting you. And it was the best I knew and it was the best I could do. But I've learned some new things and I'm going to be trying to make some changes. So you might, and sometimes I'm going to blow it. And, you know, I might ask you for a do-over, like just lay it on the table with them and own our own behavior and say, it was the best I could do at the time. But I've learned some new things and I want to do some things in a different way because I love you and I want us to be close. That can happen at any age, right up, even if they have left the home. And something I would love to share with you, one of my dear, dear friends and colleagues, Rebecca Thompson Hitt, who has Consciously Parenting, just came out with her fourth book that I was privileged to write the foreword to, which is called Never Too Late to Heal. And I got to read, you know, when it was not even its actual book yet, like the galley. And I she does these healing story circles, and I've been privileged to be part of that for 4 years every week.
Amazing.
And
Oh,
I can personally attest to the power of being listened to, which is really what healing is about, is being listened to.
yeah, it
So
is.
I think that's the strongest parenting tool we really have, is listening
It is. It
in
is.
every way.
Yes, yes. I did work with a couple who came to me for their son who was 39. And, you know, they started reconnecting, listening, seeing him in a different lens, and were able to, and he had anxiety through the roof and all these issues. And I'm like, you are more powerful than you know. And got
I love
helped.
that you're doing that work with parents of children of all
Yeah,
ages. I think
yeah.
it's so incredible.
Thank you so much. And the message at the core, the foundation is the same. It's back to connection. It's really everything, everything, every case, every parent, every child. That's really all it comes back
Yes.
to.
And you
Right?
know what? I mean, I know the most popular quote is "Let's raise children who won't have to recover from their childhood." But my own favorite quote of mine
Yeah.
is that we are either going to spend the time
Yes.
connecting and meeting children's needs, or we're going to spend time dealing with the behavior caused by the unmet needs. Either way, we're
Yes.
going to spend the time. Parenting
Yes.
is work.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how do we want to spend our time? Do we want to
Yes.
spend it trying to, deal with behaviors, or do we want to spend it connecting? Because they're
Yes.
directly related.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we get to choose.
Yes. And I always And it's so true in my own, because I kind of woke up when my son was 2 and became a different person and parent. And I always say this way is so much easier too. It's so much
And
less
more fun.
and more fun and so much less stressful. It
Yes.
really is because you don't have to use coercion and control and fighting and power struggles and all these things because you actually don't need any tips or strategies because when you're so deeply connected, you know what to say in the moment. You know how to respond. You're in a different world.
It is.
It's
It's
a
completely a
different
different world.
world. Yeah.
And I mean, the only tool you really need is, how do we get back to connection? Because
Yeah.
the only time their behavior is a problem is when they need something or something is hurting them. It's one of those two things. I mean,
Yeah.
there are other behavior issues, and I address that in the book, that,
Yeah.
all kinds of physical things could be going on with them. There's a lot of things where you need special help for that. And
Hmm.
the older they are, the more special help we're likely to need.
Hmm.
So it's much easier to start. I always tell parents, if you think parenting a baby is hard, wait till they're a
Wait.
teen. It's so, because when they're little, we can control their environment to a point.
Yes. Yes.
And the older they get, the less of that we have. So it's almost like the older they get, the more we need the strongest possible connection. So the earlier we can get
Yes.
started with that, the better.
Yes.
But at
Yeah.
any point, if we say, this is what I want to do, and will you help me? And I mean, children wouldn't think to say, if they've been used to coercive parenting, I don't like the way you just talked to me. They wouldn't dare to say that. But if children have the courage to say that, that means they feel safe. And so we
Yes.
can encourage them to say, if ever I talk to you in a way that doesn't feel good to you, would you please remind me that I want to be a different kind of parent, and I will, do that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to give our children permission to do that. And that's too about, if we're going to ask for a do-over, we're modeling that. And at some point we will hear them say to their sibling or to us, I think we need a do-over because I
Yeah.
didn't talk very nice to you, or I grabbed your toy, or yeah,
Yeah.
it's a powerful tool.
Yes, it is. And you just reminded me of because a lot of parents are struggling with their child's disrespect. They're talking to them a certain way, they're being, and what is underneath that? What could you tell a parent? Because I think they need help there with the disrespect. It's such a big issue these days. What would you say?
So I think you mean on the child's part, what's underneath that on the
Yeah.
child's part?
So that the parent can see
I
it
would say
different.
hurt.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
if a child's coming back, I hate you, that's hurt. Underneath anger is always hurt,
Yes.
always.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we can say, please talk to me like I'm someone you love. Or we can say, when you talk to me that way, that tells me I've done something that's hurt you. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But if our buttons get pushed, like, you do not,
Yeah.
talk to me that way, then it's not
Yeah.
going to go forward in a way that's going to create connection. So it's sort of like the minute we feel our buttons being pushed, that's a red flag for us of like, oh,
Yeah.
to just delay reacting if we can, because it's usually if we just pop right out of I know the other thing, and I love this so much about Alfie Kohn, and he has a whole article that he does on good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Parents and teachers hate me when I address that topic because you just hear it everywhere constantly, to the point where it really doesn't mean anything to children.
No.
And it's an evaluation. It's not an appreciation. So the tip I give to parents and teachers, the word good is already going to be out of our mouth. And the way that we can make a correction is to say, good for you.
Yes.
Because that's just an appreciation. It's not an evaluation. And that's what matters. And that gives us a second to, think, to describe what they did, or, to give a more genuine appreciation. But catching that good and just completing it by saying, good for you.
Yeah.
That was something I had to learn, because it didn't come out my mouth. And, in spite of myself, it can still come out my mouth, because we're so conditioned to do that. And the intention is good.
Yeah.
The intention is to, appreciate, but it comes out evaluate. So we can do better. We can do much better than good job.
Yes, and the, like you said, the intention is good when saying good job, good job. But if we really, 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 deconstruct a lot of things we say to our children, there's always a hint of manipulation in there, right? When we're sometimes, like I love that you ate all your food today. Like, keep doing it, keep doing it, or little things, or even, and Alfie gets deep into the rewards and
I had an experience of that the other day, because I had just listened to the interview that you did with him. And I volunteer in the schools with first graders as a reading buddy.
Oh.
And when we went to come out in the hall to work, all the spaces were taken, and there was this little desk, and the teacher said, well, maybe we can pull 2 chairs over to this desk. And so she asked the student to go get the other one, and she brought one over. So we sat down, and we're just about to start reading, when this well-intentioned, well-meaning, either volunteer or teacher came by and gave him this piece of paper and said something like, good job going and getting that chair. And I was inside of me, I was going, no, you just ruined it. But he didn't know. He hasn't heard the whole thing of punished by rewards and how it takes away their intrinsic motivation. And, it's not as known as we would like it to be. But it was so obvious to me. So I said, well, what is that paper for? What does that say? And it was some kind of like a hall pass. It was some goodie, not candy, but paper candy. And I just thought it was just so unnecessary. And he could have just said, something about, it made me happy when I saw you getting a chair for, the person here, or something. But it just, we're so conditioned to reward children. And verbally, or, with something more tangible. And that's going to be a long road. I know I say about my literacy project, it's such a great project because no one argues with you about literacy. But Alfie has his work cut out for him to convince people to not do rewards and punishments.
Yes. Yes.
100%.
Yes. It's so many parents, it's so embedded in us that a child needs to be punished to learn their lesson. And Alfie says, you're teaching them that they must suffer in some way to learn a lesson. And that's not the lesson they're learning at all, at all,
Right.
at all, at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and to give parents grace about this, that's what we grew up with. That's what our
Absolutely.
model was. That's what's in our culture. It's all around us. So it's a giant step to get outside of that.
Yes.
So I want to be really clear that I'm not talking about that in a blaming way to parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that used to be what I thought. Until I
Yeah.
had more information and
Yeah.
more healing, did more of my healing work. I mean, I was one of those kids that was such a good kid. I never had to be punished because I didn't dare to not be that good. And but I saw my brother be punished a lot because he wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But it's we have a tough battle on our hands to move away from that model into
Yes.
the connection model for sure.
Yeah. And the parents feel pressure to be almost strict and in
Yes.
control, right?
Right. Like, what kind of parent are you if your child is behaving that way?
Yeah, I
But
think you
then the
get
criticism,
more criticism for not punishing than punishing, you know?
yeah,
I feel, and sorry, I love so much that you brought up in the book about, forcing a child to say please and thank yous and all those things. And because I get such weird faces and looks that I've never told my son ever to say please or thank you. And I'm
good for you.
no, thank you. Thank you. But he says it all the time because
you
I
want
say
it.
it all the time. Yes.
Yes,
And that's,
yeah.
yeah, it's sincere when he says it now, right? Because it's coming from him. And isn't that so much more beautiful than when, it's there, he's robotically saying,
Prompted, always
yeah,
prompted. Yes, I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's really hard for me because a big part of what I do is give away free books at community events. So I hear it all the
Oh, yeah.
And so I tried to think of, okay, it's one of those things like, how do you advocate for the child without humiliating the parent? And so I'm always trying to think of a way, and I'll say, he said thank you with his eyes, it is really hard because we are so conditioned to do that.
Yes.
And I try to tell parents, you can just say thank you. And they'll
Yes.
hear you saying thank you, and they, like your son,
Yes.
they just automatically imitate us.
Yes, yes, yes. One time he was given a gift for his birthday. He was 3 and by my friend, and he didn't say thank you. And I said thank you. And even, and a lot of time, the reasoning behind our pressure to push manners is because of the judgment of other parents and the approval, right? And I think if you really want to be a connected parent, you have to be bold and secure and really shut that judgment off, because that's a driver for so many parents is all the things, the good job, the say please, the say thank you, the punishment, all of it is about other people.
Well, and also we can add that when we think about it. Do we always say please and thank you? No, we don't. So
No.
what we're modeling is you don't always say it. But when they try to don't always say it, they get corrected for it.
Yes.
And so if we really feel passionate about them always saying please and thank you, then we need to be mindful of always saying please and thank you to them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we often don't think to say please and thank you to a child. And they
Yeah.
have as much right to that respect as we do.
Yes. But for some reason, we have these expectations sometimes that are not aligned with their age. And as Dr. Ross Green says, children do well if they can, but also 99% of their acting out is because they can't meet our expectations.
We're
Why
very
are
blessed
our,
from
why,
Portland, where I live.
sorry?
I said, we're very blessed. Ross is from Portland, where I
Oh,
live.
really?
Yes.
Oh, love
Yes,
him.
his work is just incredible. I think he's now like in New Zealand and Australia doing
Oh,
workshops over there. I got a
really?
post the other day. His work is
Oh,
very powerful. And in fact, when my youngest, who is my challenged child, I went to his workshop, The Explosive Child, and I swear it saved our relationship. It really
oh,
gave me
wow.
so many tools to work with. parenting a
Wow.
child who's more.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, he's amazing. I think one of the biggest, blocks in our parenting and keeping things kind of stressful and chaotic and conflict is the gap in our expectations for our children. I think that's keeping so many of us parents stuck. And I remember when my child was 1.5, I had these absurd expectations.
Oh,
Look, and now and if we reassess, oh, he's here to say hi. You want to say hi? This is my son. If we were to reassess them and to look at them from, a new place where they are developmentally and what makes sense, what's realistic, what's unrealistic, what's more about maybe our thirst for control and what is more for us and really for their well-being. But that practice, I think, is also so important because it takes away half the conflict. If we can, lower our expectations or even throw some out the window that don't really need to be there.
Absolutely. And so often we inadvertently put children in a situation where it's not going to be best for them. Like you don't take a hungry, tired child to the grocery store. And sometimes you have no choice, and you get the consequences of doing that, they want that candy bar, whatever. And we don't want them to have it. And, the obvious is going to happen. One of the things that I used to do with my spirited child, if I knew we were going like to a family gathering or, someplace where I really wouldn't want to deal with the temper tantrum because of the criticism and because of the lack of support, I would just say an arbitrary no before we left. Like, can I have a drink of water? No. A crazy no. And we would have the meltdown in advance. And empty out anything that had stored up between the last one and this one. And so then we could leave the house with a clean slate with the need to release met already, because it really was amazing.
I never heard of this.
Well, because it's just what I kind of called being proactive. Because when you have a spirited child, everything is more intense for them. Their needs are higher. There's just, their sensitivity is higher. So, when you're going into an unknown situation, it might not take much to fill, tip over the cup, the Hertz cup.
Yeah.
And so it's like, let's tip it now with just something arbitrary that's not high stakes. And let's just deal with it at home where we have resource, and then be able to go forward into the event, kind of with that emptied out and not on the verge of tipping over. So just understanding, that I really love my analogy of that they have two cups. They have their love cup, which we need to keep full, and they have their Hertz cup, which we need to keep empty by this.
That's a great thing to keep as an image in your mind.
It is. It's great. Really, it simplifies it. Like, am I keeping their love cup full? Like, the worst possible scenario for a parent is to be with a child whose love cup is empty and their Hertz cup
is full.
It's not about the cookie. It's
not. Yes, it's never about the cookie.
Never about the cookie. So it's just, I'm not saying everybody should do that. It was a unique circumstance with that unique child.
Yeah.
And it was just something I figured out. I think maybe it happened one day and I went, oh, like the tantrum happened before we left the house. And I was like, we could do this intentionally. You figure things out along the way. But
okay. Lastly, because I've taken so much of your time, speaking of Hertz, so realizing, I love that how you bring it to light, that a child, has Hertz inside and that's what's coming out. But you also said we have Hertz inside. We are full of like a lake, a river full of Hertz.
By the time we're an adult, we have a lake of uncried tears, of unraged rage, of yes, we do.
Yes, you said tears that don't come out go in.
Yes.
Right. It's so beautiful, and they get stored. And I think just of a parent, we we say we had great childhoods, everything's fine, we're fine, we don't even question anything, we're just, being
Yes.
parents now. And I think it's so powerful. And we need to have that self-compassion in order to be self-aware, to be like, you know what? I hurt a lot. I wasn't allowed to feel my emotions, not to blame parents because
Right.
they had
were
that
doing the best
too.
they could.
Yes, exactly. It actually brings you more compassion to your parents if you connect the dots. But to 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 actually go there and say, I have hurts. I am full of hurt. And when my child is hurting, my hurt is being triggered. And this is why I'm yelling, or this is why I get dismissive, or this is why I start crying, or this is why I take it personally. This is why, because we need to have that conversation with ourselves.
Yes. And we need opportunities to release that.
Yeah.
We need safe places, and we need people who will listen to us and not try to fix it and not try to give advice, and just let us cry or let us rant. And because once it's out, it's out.
Yes.
So we can start draining that lake little by little by little. And the more that we do, the more our own clear thinking, is available to us, because we can't think well when we're triggered. We can't.
No. Okay, I promise this is the last question.
I could talk to you all day.
I know, we do. I love it. You homeschooled your children, right?
I did.
You did. And I'm homeschooling my son. And I just am curious to know back then, what made you make that decision?
Okay. It's funny. I just recently talked with someone about that. So my oldest daughter was in 7th grade, and my youngest daughter was starting kindergarten. And as I suspected, it wasn't going well for her. And a friend gave me a book by John Holt called Teach Your Own. And I read it. I didn't even know you could homeschool. So I thought, I think this might be what we need to do. And back then it was much harder to do than it is now. So I thought, well, I cannot offer this to my one daughter and not offer it to my other daughter, who's in 7th grade. And to my total surprise, she took me up on it and said, yeah, I want to do that. And so she homeschooled for 7th and 8th grade. And then she decided, I think I might like to try high school. And so she did go to high school for a couple of years. And then her senior year, she was like, Mom, I feel like a pony in a turnstile. I already have enough credits to graduate. I want to homeschool the rest of my year. I can still graduate with my class. But my other daughter, she did go into school and do some things like chorus and, some different things like that. But she mostly homeschooled, her whole school age life. But, and then my grandchildren and my great grandson. So I tell people I'm a third generation homeschooler.
Wow.
And my great grandson is now in school, but he was homeschooled till 3rd grade. And then he went to public school. My other 2 granddaughters did a combination of homeschool and public school. But so it's kind of in our blood.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. I mean, I'm a pro homeschooler, unschooler. And if there's any moms, because I heard there's thousands a month that are leaving public or private school system and homeschooling. What would your, message be to a mom or parents who are on the fence, who are not sure, who want to homeschool, but maybe are afraid or just don't feel confident enough about, or just are scared? What would you say to them?
I think what I would say to that is, in a way, homeschooling is a misnomer, because we need to not try to recreate school at home. It doesn't take nearly the number of hours to, provide schooling for one child, or education, I'd rather say, for one child than it does for a whole classroom. So, our vision sometimes of homeschooling is that we need to recreate that at home. And then what have we done? We don't want to recreate that same circumstance. We want to create something new. And so I think the pandemic, if there was any, good light to the pandemic, it was that a lot of parents realized maybe I can do this because they kind of were.
Yeah.
And so I would say way lower your expectation of what it is. Children are natural learners. And if we provide an enriched environment, and I wrote an article about it once, and I said, think of yourself as a homeschooling parent as like the general contractor on a project. You know, you might want to sub out karate and music, and, you know, because we can't be teachers of all things. So that's not our job. We're like the general contractor. We're going to oversee the, you know, educational environment, and we're going to provide these things, but we won't be doing all of it. And so it is possible to do it and work if that's what's needed. That parents need to work. You know, having a village is absolutely necessary if you're going to be a working homeschool parent.
Yeah.
I'm part of my daughter, my older daughter's homeschool network for her.
Oh, yeah.
For my granddaughter. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so you do need, you know, you need people. It's impossible to do alone, but it's possible to create the village to do it. It really can be. If you think of yourself as the general contractor and not as the, you know, teacher, janitor, principal.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Is, you know, not having all those jobs, that we have to sub out some of those jobs.
Yeah. And that even, I think a great message that we all need to be reminded in this crazy day and age is that a child's rhythm is more slow. You know, we don't have to fill in every hour with an activity or with extra.
It's actually best not to.
Sorry?
It's actually best not to.
Yes, yes.
You know Peter Gray's work?
No.
Oh, Google him.
Oh, wait. Yes. I do.
So when I was homeschooling, it was John Holt, and he had passed. But Peter Gray would be the person that I would say is the homeschooling champion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love, even Gordon Neufeld has spoken about it, and right? Yes. I love him. And, you know, it's a myth that children need to be socialized and sociable, and, you know, especially very, very young, right? We're like, they need to play with friends their age. It's like, actually, no, they need to be with you. That's way more important right now.
Right. And every parent doesn't have the, you know, the wherewithal to be able to have it be that way. And so that's one of the things I really try to emphasize. No matter what your parenting circumstance is, there's a way to create connection. You know, you may have to modify, you know, there's ways to do it that are easier. There are ways to do it that are harder. And if you're a full-time working single mom and you have aspirations to be a homeschooler, you can do it, but it requires a lot of support and being willing to say, I don't need to take all this on. I just need to make it happen. So, you know, but to not, you know, beat themselves up and think I couldn't possibly do this, or, you know, we all do the best we can do. And when we can do better, we do. But, you know, doing our own healing work and then bringing in as much support as we can possibly create, I think are the two things we can do to make connection parenting work for us. Yes,
because parenting is near impossible. It's the hardest job in the world. And, you know, it's true. Even in my own life, my family's in Canada. I'm in the States. You know, few friends here and there, but, you know, my husband is working all day. I'm homeschooling, I'm working, and I never think about how I actually should have more support for myself, or even think about asking for support. We don't even think to ask for support. And I love how you really shine a light on how unsupported we are and how unresourced we are and how we need it. It's really a necessity, and what we are doing is nearly impossible. And to have grace with ourselves. We're all doing amazing. We're all doing the best we can, but it's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
You know, and just remembering our parents were doing the best they could, and back and back. And just to understand that, I had once in my prison class, a father and son who were both
Oh,
incarcerated, and they were both
oh,
in my parenting class.
oh my gosh.
So imagine,
Wow.
here's the son. How's he going to talk about what his parenting was like with his dad sitting right
Oh,
there? And the
wow.
dad, like, where did he get what he got from? And, it's like illiteracy is
Yeah.
incredibly generational. So,
Wow. Well, thank you so much for
and so
you.
much.
So much fun. We should do another one because there's so many more questions I have. And yes, I could talk to you for literally hours and hours and hours about this.
Well, we'll do it again then.
Yes, but thank you so, so much for the work you do, your mission, children's books. That's just such a beautiful thing. Every parent needs to have this book, Connection Parenting.
It's also available on audiobook because a lot of
Okay.
parents don't have time to read. They're
Yeah.
just so busy meeting needs.
Yeah. Listen to it in the car whenever you have time. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
You're
Yes.
welcome. Let me tell you one last thing about
Yes.
listening in the car. I always tell parents it's totally fine to listen to that with your children in the car because I don't say anything I wouldn't want them to hear. However, if you do, be prepared for them to say, didn't that lady say? Accountability.
Yes. But I
Thank you
love that
so
they
much.
can openly listen to it with their kids in the car.
Yeah,
That's huge. Thank you again.
you're
Such a
welcome.
pleasure and privilege. Take good care and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Thank you.